We're headed into week 3 of the 2019 college football season, and that means it's time for some more preview and prediction videos. Somebody made the comment last week during one of the live streams I did that there weren't any good games coming up this weekend. And while I'll agree we don't have sort of the marquee matchups that we had last weekend with the top 15 games between LSU, Texas, Clemson, and Texas A&M, I think overall this coming up weekend we have more good games than we had last weekend. So I don't think it's a total loss. We've definitely got some games worth watching this week. Starting to get into some conference play here with all of the Power 5 conferences. Yes, you still have some teams playing, lower classification schools, but a lot more conference versus conference or conference matchups this week than we've had the first couple of weeks. Today's Tuesday. That means it's time for the SEC preview. Let's go. Hey, good morning, and that. It's Uncle Lou here. Yep, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos every single day of the year, year-round. Some of them are even watchable. Hit the thumbs up button if you're excited for week 3 here in the SEC. And we've got some pretty good games coming up, one in particular on Saturday night that a lot of people are looking forward to. As usual, all of my preview and prediction videos this season are going to be sponsored by the good people over at betnow.eu. There's a link in the description of this video. If you click that link, it'll take you over there and you can get yourself signed up. It's really easy to do. After you get signed up, go ahead and make your first deposit. They're going to give you a 100% bonus on whatever you put in. So deposit $100, you're going to have $200 in your account. Deposit $50, you're going to have $100 in your account. You get it. Double the amount you deposit will show up in your account. That's good through September 16th, so only through, I guess, the rest of this week. Then I think it goes down to a 50% bonus. So go ahead and get yourself signed up. Take advantage of that free money. Double your deposit. All right, let's jump right in. We're going to do this the same way we do it every single week during these preview and prediction videos. We're going to start with the early games, work our way up through the late games. Again, these are SEC games only. Tomorrow will be the rest of the teams in the top 25. Then Thursday, a third preview and prediction video covering all the teams that didn't fit into either category today or tomorrow. So all the games that are interesting to me that aren't SEC games and aren't in the top 25, because those will have already been covered today and tomorrow. All right, coming up at noon over on ESPN2, my Georgia Bulldogs take on another cupcake. Let's just be real. No disrespect for Arkansas State here. There won't be any hype and hate video for them this week. But the good news is this is the last week of no hype and hate videos from Uncle Lou. Of course, after this game, we have the big Notre Dame game coming up. And then after that, a whole string of SEC games leading up to the last game of the season when we play Georgia Tech, an ACC team. So there will be a hype and hate video for Georgia every Monday starting next week. And trust me when I tell you, you do not want to miss next week's hype and hate video, Georgia versus Notre Dame. But Georgia's a 33.5-point favorite in this one at home against Arkansas State. Georgia, of course, ranked 3rd, staying at 3 this week in both the AP and the coaches poll and the Uncle Lou poll, which is really the only one that matters. I'm always afraid to lay big numbers with Georgia. They put them up last week, though, scoring 60-something points. And honestly, I can't remember the last time I saw a Georgia team score that many points. It's been a long time. I've been wanting to see more passing from Georgia. I didn't really get more passing, but I did like the passing that they did do, especially in the second quarter last week. George Pickens with a couple of catches, the one amazing diving catch that everybody's seen. Jake Fromm, I think, was 10 for 11 for about 160 yards. So another efficient performance by Jake Fromm. I would like to see Fromm get more attempts this week as we sort of slowly ramp the passing game up heading into the big showdown next week with Notre Dame. Not that Fromm really needs the practice against a team like Arkansas State, but we do have a team full of young, inexperienced wide receivers. I've talked about it a million times, but outside of Tyler Simmons, we didn't really have a receiver on this year's team that had ever caught a pass for the University of Georgia. And in fact, our leading returning receiver from last year was running back DeAndre Swift. We lost all of our wide receivers to the NFL, and then we had one, unfortunately, get kicked off the team over the summer. So I feel like the wide receivers are the one that need the work, and I feel like they should be getting that work from Jake Fromm, not the backup. Chemistry in game time experience is something that you really can't duplicate, replicate, or experience in practice. I'm of the opinion that you have to get that in a game. So I would like to see Fromm play at least the entire first half and have closer to maybe 20 attempts as opposed to last week where we saw the 11. In any case, I think Georgia covers the 33.5 here. This isn't a homer pick. I usually stay away from Georgia when they're favored 28 points or more. But Georgia's running game is just so dominant. I don't think anybody would be surprised to see a couple of home runs here on the ground game with Georgia, whether it's DeAndre Swift. Zeus has looked increasingly good over the first couple of weeks. Both those guys are averaging 9, 10, 11 yards a carry for the season. Nobody would be surprised to see either one of them get a 40, 50, 60-yard touchdown run. If the passing game comes through like I'm wanting it to, I don't think Georgia will have any problem covering this 33.5. They'll be covering it by halftime, I think. Just sort of depends what Kirby Smart wants to do. It's always a gamble laying this many points against a weaker team because you know Georgia's going to take the starters out at some point. But I'm going to go with the dog since it's under 5 touchdowns and lay that 33.5. Man, here's an interesting game here. Kansas State on the road at Mississippi State, 12 o'clock on ESPN. This is going to be a good game to watch at noon. Two underrated teams, I think. I was down on Mississippi State heading into this season, particularly their head coach. I wasn't sold on him. They've looked pretty good so far this year. Now, the competition hasn't been the best. I'll be the first to admit it. But you can say the same thing about Kansas State. But both of these teams come into this game at 2-0. Kansas State, of course, new head coach Chris Kleeman comes down from North Dakota State, where all he did there was win like 5 of the last 6 FCS national championships. Kansas State has held their opponents to 14 points all year total. So they're giving up an average of 7 points per game. Tommy Stevens, quarterback from Mississippi State, he's a little dinged up with a shoulder. He left the game last week. Backup played, I think, most of the second half, not all of the second half. They haven't said whether he's going to go or not yet this week. And that does matter to me in terms of my picks for this game. Right now, I would lean Kansas State and take that 8.5 points. I have a feeling this could be a close game, even if Tommy Stevens ends up playing for Mississippi State. If he doesn't play, I think the 8.5 to Kansas State is almost free money. If you're leaning towards Kansas State in this game, I would play them. I would play him now at the 8.5 because if it's announced that Tommy Stevens is not going to play later in the week, this 8.5 number could go down under a touchdown, and I think you want to get at least 7 points here if you're going with Kansas State. I'm going to go ahead and take it at the 8.5. Give me Kansas State and the 8.5 points. Chattanooga at Tennessee, also at 12 on the SEC Network. Listen, Tennessee has got to win this game, and I think they are, and I think they're going to win it big. Now, I can't lay money on Tennessee right now. I just can't. They have just looked so bad in the first 2 weeks of the season. Obviously, the Georgia State loss, just absolutely embarrassing. Last week's loss, BYU, an okay team. And really, it's not just that Tennessee lost that game. It's how they lost it. You have BYU basically beat. All you have to do is keep the ball in front of you. You let a BYU receiver get 10 yards behind your deepest man on defense. We know what happened there. And then in the overtime, Tennessee stands the running back up at about the 2-yard line and just got out-willed. BYU just imposed their will, pushed the running back into the end zone. There was nothing the Tennessee defense could do about it. We had a couple of Tennessee players quit the team last week. Haven't heard anything like that happening yet this week. But, of course, the natives are restless in Knoxville. They're tired of losing to what they consider to be these subpar teams. I do think Tennessee gets a win this week. I do think they win this game comfortably. I really do. If you look at Chattanooga and the SEC teams they've played over the last few years, last year they played a South Carolina team that wasn't very good, and they lost by 40. In 17, they played an LSU team, same LSU team that lost to Troy that year. They lost to LSU by 35. In 16, this is actually the closest they've came against an SEC team. This is kind of weird, but in 16, they only lost to Alabama by 28. Tennessee's a 28-point favorite in this one. Back in 2014, they played Tennessee and got blown out. So they haven't even come close against some not-so-good SEC teams. Now, this Tennessee team, at least from what we've seen so far, is probably the worst SEC team that Chattanooga has faced over that time period. I just don't see any way Tennessee loses this game. I really don't. I don't know if I would lay the 28 here. I would probably not play this game. Does Tennessee leave all the starters in this game if they're up 28 in the second half? I think they should, because they obviously need a lot of work, but I don't know that they will. So we'll see. I would not play this game. There's no way I would take Chattanooga. Tennessee, as bad as they are, could win this game by 35, 40 points. This is a no play for me. All right, Alabama on the road at South Carolina. Big one here, 3:30 at CBS. I say big. Everyone expects Alabama to win this game big, but of course South Carolina did beat Alabama the last time they played. Even though it was way back in 2011, South Carolina fans still love talking about it. South Carolina with a quarterback change due to an injury to Jake Bentley, which rumor mill circulating late last night and this morning that he's probably going to be entering the transfer portal, which makes sense. Helinski's going to, I mean, Helinski was sort of the quarterback of the future for South Carolina anyway, with this being Jake Bentley's last year. And since he got hurt in the second game, he can sort of do the same thing that Kelly Bryant did last year. Now, Kelly Bryant didn't get hurt. He just got replaced as the starter. You can play up to 4 games, you know, and then transfer out. And I'm pretty sure that's what Jake Bentley will end up doing. Where will he land? Way too soon to have any idea about that. I'm sure he won't decide till the end of the season when you sort of look around at other teams' quarterback situations and things like that. But Helinski is going to get the start. Led South Carolina to a big win last week over a terrible team. But he looked good. And I say this all the time, you know, they always with the who have they played thing, and I get that. But the problem is, I mean, I could make a whole video on the who have you played, but I mean, somebody plays the 15th ranked team and beats them by 2 touchdowns, and then in the comment section, it's like, well, they weren't that good. They shouldn't have been ranked. Listen, unless you think there's only 4 or 5 good teams, then stop with the who have they played. But if you do play a terrible team, which South Carolina did, all you can do is go out and beat the hell out of them. I mean, it's not like South Carolina won by 7 points. So, oh, look at the competition, though. Yeah, look at it. So what do you want them to do? You want them to go out and be like Tennessee and struggle or lose? I mean, no, you don't. You want to go out and blow those teams out. That's what South Carolina did. I don't know what else they could have done last week. Now, does that mean they're going to have a chance against Alabama here? No, I don't think so. Alabama has covered the spread even 11 of the last 17 times they've played an SEC game on the road. So, you know, 26 points, that's how much Alabama is favored. I would take Alabama in this game on anything under 28. If it gets over 4 touchdowns, I probably would stay away or consider going with South Carolina at that point. But I think 26 points is a favorable number for Alabama. They could be up by that much at halftime. I mean, they're just that much better than South Carolina. They really are. Helinski, as good as he looked last week, he's never seen anything like what he's going to see this week against that Nick Saban defense. Give me the Tide, late at 26. All right, Southeast Louisiana at Ole Miss, 4 o'clock on the SEC Network. Can any of these teams score any points? Probably not. Southeast Louisiana, they're 1-0. Their game last week was canceled against Jacksonville State, which is, well, you know where Jacksonville is, because of the threat of the hurricanes. So they've had an extra week here of rest, I guess, to prepare for this game. I don't think it'll matter against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, of course, is 1-1, losing to Memphis and then beating Arkansas last week. Not a very impressive win, and Arkansas is an epically bad team, but an SEC win nonetheless. 4 o'clock SEC Network, not sure if I said that. Ole Miss is a 31-point favorite in this one. I would take Ole Miss in late at 31. Southeast Louisiana is a terrible team. Not that Ole Miss is good, and again, you know, Ole Miss could win this game 45-10, which will cover the spread. You know, does that mean Ole Miss is suddenly a good team? No, but you'll be in the comments with the who have they played. But give me the Rebels late at 31. Colorado State at Arkansas. Arkansas is a 10-point favorite. I don't see any reason, and I'm being dead serious here, that Arkansas should be a 10-point favorite over anybody. They played Portland State week 1, one of the worst teams really in America, and beat them 20-13. This makes no sense to me. Colorado State is not a good team, but, you know, they're better than Portland State. You get them at home. Not much of a home field advantage lately at Arkansas. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. Plus, it looks like Arkansas making a quarterback change here. Hicks out, Starkle in. I mean, 10 points, really? I'll take Colorado State. Would I be shocked if Arkansas won this game? No. But if they do, it'll probably be something similar to what you saw week 1 against Portland State, the 20-13, 24-17, you know, 28-24, something like that. I can't see Arkansas beating anybody right now by 10 points. If you want to stay away from this game, go ahead. But I would take Colorado State in the 10. Kent State at Auburn. Auburn ranked 8th, 7 o'clock, ESPN2. This is an interesting game to watch to me because Bo Nix has not looked good, period. Forget the Oregon game. Okay, he threw the game-winning touchdown pass on a pass he shouldn't have thrown in a situation where he shouldn't have thrown it. All Auburn needed was a field goal to win the game there. This guy throws a desperation pass down to the 1-2 yard line. The wide receiver makes a great catch. It wasn't a good throw. He was covered, really. You should not have made that throw. He hasn't looked good. He didn't look good last week. He's completing 47% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for the year. Supposed to be a runaround guy. Not really running the ball much either. I think he has 9 rushes for about 50 yards. So he just hasn't looked good. He hasn't looked impressive. He wasn't good, especially in the first 3.5 quarters against Oregon. He didn't look good last week against a terrible Tulane team. Auburn's got some offensive issues. What a surprise. Gus Malzahn is having offensive issues. I don't think anybody is shocked by that. What did they beat Tulane? 24 to, what was it? I mean, they didn't beat them. That was ridiculous. The offensive performance last week from Auburn was pathetic. And speaking of things that shock you, what if I told you that Auburn has 1 running back again this year? I don't understand this. I really don't. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We saw it with Kerryon Johnson. We saw it with Cam Petaway. Auburn finds a running back. They give him the ball 20 or 25 times a game. He does okay. And then in November, he can't get up off the couch. He's beat up. They're doing it again. Whitlow for running back, 47 attempts for the season. Okay, that's an average of 23.5 per game. That's too many. You're not going to make it through a season in the SEC running the ball that many times. You're just not. The next closest running back on the team has 14 attempts. That's Cam Martin. So they're doing the exact same thing. They're running Boobie Whitlow into the ground, and on top of that, he's not playing very well. He's just not. Now, Kent State's not a good team. Auburn's favored by 35 here. Kent State got blown out by Arizona State, which isn't a good team, and they barely beat Kennesaw State, which is a lower classification team, honestly. But again, Boobie Whitlow, 4 yards per carry. That's your workhorse. That's the best part of your offense through 2 weeks. Bo Nix under 50% completion, only 50 yards rushing. This guy's supposed to be the next Cam Newton, whatever the hell. Auburn's offense has got a lot of issues. With that being said, Kent State is a terrible team. I would not play this game. I'm not sure if Auburn can score 35. I'm just being real. But I know Kent State can't. They're terrible. Auburn will win this game comfortably, despite their terrible offense, because they still have a really, really good defense. One of the best in the SEC, one of the best in America, honestly. Kent State will have a hard time scoring. But Auburn might too. Their offense has been epically bad. No way I play this game with Auburn as a 35-point favorite. All right, Florida at Kentucky. Florida ranked number 9. They're 2-0. This one comes on 7 o'clock at ESPN. Kentucky, of course, snapped the streak last year, beating Florida for the first time in 31 years in Gainesville. Felipe Franks had a terrible game, really. Florida's an 8.5-point favorite here. This is a hard game to figure out. All during the offseason, I picked Kentucky to win this game, right? I thought people were undervaluing Kentucky. I said, obviously, they're not going to be as good as they were last year, losing Josh Allen and Benny Snell. But I don't think they're just going to fall off. A lot of people said, well, that's it for Kentucky. They're back to winning 5 or 6 games. No, 8 wins maybe for Kentucky this year. And I picked one of those wins to come against Florida. Here's the problem. Terry Wilson goes down last week. He's out for the year. You bring a quarterback in. He's a grad transfer from Troy. Did I write? I don't even know if I wrote his name down. Yeah, Sawyer Smith, grad transfer from Troy. He comes in last week after Terry Wilson goes down, goes 5 for 9 for 76 yards. So, you know, what is that, 55%? No experience here, especially in the SEC. That makes it really hard to pick Kentucky to win this game. Not that Terry Wilson was an elite quarterback, but you're throwing a guy into the fire here. We saw what Florida's defensive front did to Jaron Williams week 0. Another quarterback making his first start. This guy has made starts, but it was at Troy, this Sawyer Smith. He's not prepared for what he's going to see at Florida. Now, Florida has some issues of their own. The 50, I hope I wrote this down too. I really hope I did. 54 in total offense. How is that possible? All we heard about is Dan Mullen, the offensive guru, the quarterback whisperer. Florida's going back to the Steve Spurrier days of scoring 50 points a game and all that. 54th in total offense? 77th in rush offense? What are you doing? Your leading rusher is, who is this leading rusher? LaMichael Pirine is your leading rusher. 93 yards total for the season. Whee! Averaging a whopping 4.7 yards per carry. That's ridiculous. Georgia has 2 running backs averaging twice that. This is just insane. Longest rush of the year for LaMichael Pirine. 15 yards. You're averaging 4.3 yards rushing as a team. You can't run the ball. Now, Felipe Franks is completing his passes at a high percentage, but I still see Florida fans all over the place saying, bench this guy. Well, why in the world would you bench Felipe Franks? Who are you going to put in? Emory Jones? He's not the answer. Look, there is no answer at quarterback for Florida, to be honest. Not in terms of being an elite team anyway. But so Kentucky's without Terry Wilson. Florida's without Kadarius Toney, who really has been their best player on offense so far this year. Now, they got some other good wide receivers, and I'm not saying they don't. But if you go back and rewatch that Miami game, without Kadarius Toney, Florida loses that game. And Miami's not very good. We found that out this past weekend. Florida, you're just as good as North Carolina. No better. I mean, that's just what you are. North Carolina handled Miami about the same way you did. I mean, you're just not a very good team. Hard to go with Kentucky here, though, even though I picked them to win this game in the preseason. Kentucky, not a very good pass defense. They're ranked 97th in America against the pass. Florida has had some success throwing the ball. They can't run it to save their lives, but they can pass it. 8.5. I think that's a little bit too much. I'm going to take Kentucky in the 8.5, but I would not be shocked if Florida won this game, obviously, even though I picked Kentucky to win in the regular season. They haven't looked, in the preseason, they haven't looked quite as good offensively as I thought they would, and that was with Terry Wilson. Hard to imagine them looking much better without Terry Wilson. Again, going with this guy, Sawyer Smith, making his first start outside of his time at Troy. Florida probably wins this game, but give me Kentucky in the 8.5 points. As long as it stays over a touchdown, I'll probably take Kentucky. Lamar at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 43.5 point favorite. No, I would take Lamar or not play this game. Texas A&M starting running back out for the season. Got injured last week on the road at Clemson. Texas A&M offense looked pitiful against Clemson. They couldn't get anything going. They were a 33.5 point favorite in week 1 over something called Texas State, and they covered, but barely. I think they won by 34, 35, 34, I think it was. 43.5 is too much coming off of a game where they got beat up physically on the road at Clemson. I can't see Texas A&M covering the 43.5. I do think they win comfortably. Texas A&M is ranked 16, 7 o'clock on ESPNU if you're looking to watch this one. 43.5 is too much for me to lay on Texas A&M in this position, having come off the game on the road at Clemson. I would take Lamar in a 43.5. Northwestern State at LSU. Similar story here. LSU's a 51 point favorite. Big emotional win last week on the road at Texas. Now you come back home and have to play a nobody with a game that nobody will be watching. And if your name is nobody and you want to watch it, 7:30 SEC Network. But LSU's a 51 point favorite. If you'd have said LSU would be a 51 point favorite, if you'd have told me in the offseason that LSU would ever be a 51 point favorite this year, I'd have laughed at you, and so would everybody else. Now we've seen LSU's sort of revamped, almost air raid offense that they're running after bringing in the guy from the New Orleans Saints to completely rehaul their passing game. Anyway, Georgia can get a hold of that guy. That would be fine with me. But 51 points, too much in this spot. Similar reason to the Texas A&M game. You're coming off of an emotional game on the road, a tough physical game. Then you got to come back home and play a nobody. I'm going to go with Northwestern State in the 51. Obviously, LSU will win this game by a bunch. Hopefully, they win it by about 49 or so if you're going to play Northwestern State. But that's what I would do. I would take Northwestern State and the 51 points. All right, Southeast Missouri State at Missouri is the last SEC game, 7:30 SEC Network. Missouri is a 34-point favorite. I would take Missouri here. I don't know what happened week 1 with Missouri on the road at Wyoming. I do not think that's the real Missouri team. I think the team we saw last week against West Virginia is the real Missouri team. Now, I know West Virginia is bad. Are they Wyoming bad, though? I don't know. So until I'm proven wrong, I'm just going to almost pretend like that Wyoming game didn't even happen for Missouri. Kelly Bryant, he's going to get better, I think, as the year goes along. You got to remember, he's only there to try to make the NFL. So he's going to put all his energy and effort into giving his absolute most every single game to try to do that. I'm going to the 34, that's under 5 touchdowns. Southeast Missouri State, not a very good team. I would consider taking the over in this game too, maybe, but give me Missouri, lay to 34. All right, that's it for this week's SEC game. So we got some good ones. I like the Florida-Kentucky matchup. Obviously, that's one worth watching. Kansas State, Mississippi State, I think will be a good one too. And of course, everyone is going to watch at least the end of that Tennessee game to see whether they finally get their first win. So no huge marquee matchups this week involving like rank versus rank or anything like that, like we had last week with LSU, Texas, and Texas A&M, Clemson. But still, some games worth watching. I'll be streaming Saturday night over on the Patreon page. So this Florida-Kentucky game, join the stream, and we can watch that game together, talk about it as it's going on. There's some other good games coming on outside of the SEC Saturday night too. So that's when I've decided to do this week's Patreon stream. We'll start at around 7 o'clock probably. But anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. Have a good morning.